I've worked with many clients over the years who have been in crisis and helped them to achieve loving and caring relationships. In this short webinar, I'd like to share a 3-step approach, how I've achieved this, and ideas that can be useful for you. Before we start, I'd like to share 3 stages of the relationship that most people go through in marriage. The first stage we can call the honeymoon stage. When 2 people meet, it's generally very, very positive. There's a lot of warmth, connection, good communication, fun. And often people feel that they've met the person of their dreams, the person who can fulfill their inner desires and all their needs. Unfortunately, this stage never lasts. The second stage people enter is called what we can call the disconnection stage. When people get into more stressful living, that can come through financial issues, making a long-term commitment to each other, having children, health issues. At this point, life becomes tougher and people start looking more at the negative side of the person, and that comes out much more than in the first stage. There can be arguments, miscommunication, and ultimately, unfortunately, in many cases, or at least some cases, crises occurs that can even threaten the relationship. Fortunately, there's a third stage, which we can call the reconnection stage, where people create the true love and connection that they've really wanted all along. And that comes by being consciously aware of the other's needs, meeting their needs, creating good communication, and creating a fulfilling and loving relationship. I've seen the 3 major tools that can help a person achieve this ultimate relationship, and which I'd like to share with you, is based on creating good communication, on developing abilities to resolve conflicts, and creating greater love by giving. The type of dynamics we have in a relationship and the communication styles. What I see a lot of is what's called fight or flight. People fighting, critical, or people pulling away. And if we look at this in the term dynamics of the relationship, we can call it the hailstones and the tortoise dynamic. One person is often throwing the hailstones, being critical of the other person. The other often pulls away and goes into their shell like a tortoise. Now what happens over here is the hailstone person thinks, oh, I'm not being heard. The other person's not responding, they're just pulling away. It's because I'm not throwing enough hailstones. So they start throwing more hailstones, becoming more critical and louder. The other pulls away more. And it gets worse and worse, and they get more and more lack of communication. Now that is not the only dynamics. You can get people who are 2 hailstones, who are both being highly critical. Or you can get 2 people who are both tortoises, and they're starting to pull away, and there's no communication at all. None of these methods work. What does work is something which is totally counterintuitive, and that is to listen and seek to understand the other person before you try and feel that you've understood yourself. To do this, there's a very powerful tool which is used in imago therapy, which I use, which is called mirroring. Mirroring is when one person, before answering or replying to the other person's communication, they repeat what the other person has said to check that they've heard the other person. So let me give you an example. Just say one person is upset that the other person is leaving their dirty cups around. So in the negative communication, one more person will say, you're leaving your dirty cups around and it's irritating me. Negative communication is, no, I don't, or you do the same, defense or attack. Over here, if a person reflects back and paraphrases what's being said and says, let me see if I understand what you said, that you are saying that I am leaving my dirty cups around and that's irritating you. And the other person, they check with the other person to see if they've been understood. The other person says yes if they are, or rephrases if they haven't quite got it. And then we try the other way around. Both people start to listen to each other. They don't have to agree. And they can even have a compassion for where the other person's holding. Through that, we can form an ability to understand the other person's world. And that in itself brings a calmness and an ability to go forward to work out towards a solution. Relationships is being able to effectively resolve conflict. Now there's two types of states we can be in when we're having a dialogue. One is calm, the second is reactive. When we're in a reactive state or going into a reactive state, we become illogical, we say things we don't mean, we jump to conclusions, and this is totally unproductive to create a good solution to our difficulties. So I'd like to share a few tips that are key to be able to resolve difficulties in a productive way. The first, and this may seem very obvious, but it's actually quite uncommon, is never to start a communication about something that's difficult is when you're not in a calm mood. It's vital that a person starts a communication when they are in a calm state and when both are actually ready for a communication. Even if one is ready and one's not ready, to choose a time and also a place where you can talk in a calm way. Dr. John Gottman, who's one of the leading scientific researchers into marriage, has shown that any communication that starts in a negative way will either get worse or remain on that same level. So if you start in a negative way, it is a guarantee that it's not going to be great. So that's the first pointer. The second pointer is if you do become reactive, is to stop and take a time out. Now, it is good to have a word or even a sign that you've pre-organized. You say, if I say this, like time out, we stop and we break, and then you have a time later on in the day or the next day where you can communicate about that in a calm way. Because when we're not calm, we're not going to be able to communicate properly. The third pointer, maybe the most important, is don't get into shaming or blaming. It's best to use words like, this is the way I feel, as opposed to you are, and to talk about the subject like dirty cups, as opposed to putting the other person down, you're a mess. Now, we all have areas of vulnerability, triggers, what I call landmines. And when those are hit, then a person can go from 0 to 10 of negativity very quickly. And what's very common is that both people hit each other's buttons, and that's why things become explosive. I'd like to just go a little bit deeper on this point. And I'll give an example. Let's take an example of Ruth and John. And because often these triggers are rooted in our development from childhood. Ruth grew up and she felt she was ignored by her family. As a result of that, she became more outspoken and more critical to get the attention she wanted. John, on the other hand, felt very criticised by his family, by his parents, and his behaviour to stop that was to pull away. Now, Ruth and John met each other, they went through the honeymoon stage, they fell in love with each other, but when they got into the stage 2, then Ruth didn't get her needs met, felt a little bit ignored and started getting critical. John, being criticised, was triggered like he was triggered as a child, pulled away, which made Ruth more critical. And in that way, they created a kind of explosive reaction. What Ruth needs is to calm it down, to express things gently, and that would help John to be able to come out and to be able to communicate in a better way. The fourth pointer is not to try to show that you're right, but to look for solutions. Often one person can suggest, if we do this, would that work for you so it doesn't reoccur? Otherwise, people have reoccurring arguments over and over again. The same thing occurs, the same reactive behavior occurs. But if you can work out a solution, like coffee cup example, maybe we can wash our coffee cups once a day. The other person may have another pointer. But if you can work out a solution together, or even go to somebody else to help you find a solution to that problem, that could be very, very powerful. Create greater love and connection through giving. You see, we can go through the first two stages and stop bad communication, but individuals can still feel unappreciated, distant, ignored and unloved. So what we need to do is we need to give more to our spouses. And in fact, one of the problems that occurs is that there's a lack of priority given to this relationship. Everything else often is more important. The kids, the money, the work, and therefore it's relegated to a situation where not much time and thought is given to it. In some ways, we really spend more time looking after our car and having an MOT than we actually can even put into our marriage. There's a wonderful book called The 5 Love Languages, where he shares an insight that there are kind of 5 different aspects of love that we can give to our partners or our people we're married to. And I'd like to go through each one and share a little bit of insight of how they can help. But he calls it the love languages because each person may have 1 or 2 of these which are particularly pertinent to them, that they feel very touched by. The first one is quality time. Spending quality time with our husband or wife is vital. Whether it's time at night to find out how their day was, what we call in psychotherapy re-romanticizing by having a date night together, or even taking trips away together to reconnect. So many individual couples that I've spoken are spending so little time together. There's no reason why they shouldn't actually feel so disconnected if they put time into it. The second is words of affirmation, words of appreciation. People feel taken for granted. Often people actually do appreciate each other greatly, but they're not expressing it. They're not expressing how much they love each other, how much they appreciate each other, and expressing that on a daily basis or weekly basis can really build the relationship. Number 3, what he calls acts of service, where people do acts of kindness to each other, they help each other out. It could be the washing, it could be any simple things, but supporting each other, giving to each other. And again, so many people feel that they're taken for granted. Even if a person does a washing up for the other person, that may lift them and make them feel appreciated and loved. Fourthly, gifts. A gift that is given with thought, a birthday gift, or a gift at any time can touch another person to show them how important they are to you. And finally, what he calls touch. Physical touch, a kiss, hug, anything in that realm is so important that it reaffirms the relationship. When we do these acts of giving, it creates a deeper connection and a feeling of love that can transform the relationship. I hope you've enjoyed this short video and it can be valuable to you. I intend to make more of them. For people who would like to work with me personally, to apply these to their lives, you can contact me. At the end of the video, there'll be my contact number. And I offer a 15-minute free consultation to ask any questions you like about this process.